I have a history of working together and getting legislation passed in a bipartisan way. And in fact, if you just look at the last 2 years, I have written and passed more legislation through the United States Senate than any other US senator, either Democratic or Republican. That's the kind of thing we need to do to bring folks together. And we were very close to doing something with Dreamers and dealing with border protection. And yet it ended because the president abruptly and without real clear explanation said no. So we have to do it. And hopefully after this election, we'll have an opportunity to deal with a critical issue.
The fact that this nation is the greatest nation in the world, but we can't forget that, I mean, to use Pharrell's terms, stolen lands built with swollen hands. I think that the way we fix this, the way we address this, the way we bring unity is not to tear down our past, but look at working how we build our future. If you look at a scale of 1 to 100, with 100 being close to civil war, and you two are familiar, we're almost 3/4 of the way there. I think that having leadership who is used to bringing nonpartisan solutions, both in the military and in business, being raised by two Democrats from the Jim Crow South to be an independent thinker, not owned by any party or process, I think that that's the best way to go.
Well, Steve, I think we've got a race here. This is, I think, going to go right down to the wire. Our poll last week, Detroit News Channel 4 poll, had it at 3 points. My position is any poll that has a Republican within 3 points is probably a dead heat, since so many people are reluctant to tell pollsters they're voting for a Republican. You know, I think we got two strong candidates going at it here.
Yeah, I think John James is a better candidate than he was 2 years ago. There's no question about that. I think his struggle will be to, again, define his positions a little sharper. I was disappointed in his answer to a couple of the questions that we asked. The healthcare question is a great example. He talked about tort reform. He talked about market-based reforms as a solution to pre-existing conditions, which he couldn't explain, and he didn't do a good job of drilling down on, okay, what would you actually do to make sure that pre-existing conditions were covered? Then he said, well, I'd keep that part of the Affordable Care Act. Well, that's a little different than what he's saying in his commercials. He's a really good example of someone who's hitting a lot of really strong ideological points for his side of the aisle, but somebody who probably has not given enough of the thought that you need to being a legislator who can develop policy in those areas to make change. And that's a really common problem among people who run for public office the first time running for Senate, because it's a pretty steep climb. He is a better candidate this time, but he's still showing a lot of the weaknesses he had 2 years ago.
But, you know, on the other side of the coin, you've got Gary Peters touting his bipartisanship, but when the chips are on the table, he votes with Chuck Schumer. We saw that with the COVID-19 vote. It obviously wasn't the package Democrats wanted, but it was a package at a time when the economy still needs a jolt and people still need some relief. He voted against that, and you know he's got to explain the nuances of that vote. But he can. Candidates have things they're going to have to explain and defend here. But I think what we're looking at is two very strong candidates.
Well, I mean, I think he can explain that by saying it's an awful package, and the House, which is controlled by Democrats, passed a package that Democrats in the Senate would be all for.
Of course they would, because it's a package we can't afford. You can't, in good conscience, pass a package that large, that broad, and that takes in so many other things other than COVID relief and economic stimulus. This is a time with the economy recovering to be judicious and to think about how much money we're spending. Obviously, these two candidates differed on some other things as well in their discussion with us during the NPC event on Wednesday. Defense, I thought, was a clear definer between the two. One, the senator is on the Armed Forces Committee. John James has actually fought in a war. Both of them saw opportunity for Michigan, though, in the defense budget.
Yeah, they did. They saw economic opportunity for Michigan in the defense budget, which I think is absolutely there. I was also surprised by the enthusiasm that John James showed for immigration reform. Again, not a lot of specifics about how he would get there, but that sets him apart from certainly the Trump Republicans, who don't care about the value of immigration to the economy. They just
Well, it was
are
a business
anti-immigrant.
Republican point of view. I think it's a very common point of view from Republicans who come from the business world, and that's where he comes from. I hope we get a chance to sit down with these two face to face.
It'd be great
in the weeks.
Yeah, and I agree with you that it could go right down to the wire, but we'll see.